It all began with a tiny, quiet feeling deep down in my tummy. You know that little voice that speaks to you when something does not feel quite right? It is funny how those small feelings usually turn out to be exactly right in the end, isn't it? I have always been someone who trusts my heart, and this time, my heart was trying to tell me something very important. It happened slowly at first. I started to notice a very small change in the way my wife, Laura, spoke to me. Her voice sounded different than it usually did. It was a bit softer, almost like a whisper, and it felt unusual when she would tell me she was going out for lunch with a friend. It was a kind of soft, gentle voice you only pick up on if you have spent many years really listening to someone and learning their every habit. I had spent 8 long, beautiful years listening to her. Laura and I had been married for quite a while, and I cherished every moment of it. During those 8 years, we shared so many morning coffees together in our sunny kitchen. We would sit there in our pajamas, feeling the warmth of the mugs in our hands, talking about our biggest dreams in quiet whispers while the rest of the world was still asleep. We had that very special kind of understanding where you do not even need to use words because you know the other person so well. I truly thought our marriage was as strong as a rock and very solid. Of course, we had our fair share of arguments and little disagreements about things like chores or money, but I thought every couple did that. I just told myself it was a normal, everyday stress of being an adult and trying to live a busy life. That was what I believed with all my heart before I saw that one message on her phone late one night. We were sitting in the living room, and her phone was just resting there on the couch right next to me while she was in the other room. Suddenly, a notification popped up on the screen. It said, "I cannot stop thinking about today." My heart skipped a beat. The message came from a phone number I did not know or recognize. When she came back and I asked her about it, she just laughed a little bit and seemed a bit nervous, moving her hands around. She told me it was nothing important at all. She said it was just a big group chat with her girlfriends and that I know how girls can be when they get together and talk about everything. I just nodded my head and did not ask any more questions right then because I wanted to trust her, but that night, as I lay in bed next to her, I found myself staring up at the dark, empty ceiling. I knew deep in my heart that something was wrong. Something felt very, very wrong, like a puzzle piece that just did not fit anymore. As the weeks went by, her lunch dates started happening much more often than before. The reason she gave me for where she was going or who she was became less clear and more confusing. That is, when I decided I had to do something to find out the truth. I am not really proud of what I did next, because I believe in privacy, but I felt like I had no other choice. One afternoon, she left her phone alone on the table, and I took a deep breath and looked through it. The messages I found were not just friendly or about work. They were very private and showed me very clearly that she was seeing someone else. I found out the man she was talking to was named Eric. From all the things they wrote to each other, it was very clear their lunch dates were about much more than just eating a sandwich or talking about their day. I felt a huge wave of sickness wash over me, making me feel weak. Then I felt very, very angry, like a fire was burning in my chest. After that, I felt a deep sense of shame, wondering what I had done wrong. My wife, my Laura, was having a secret relationship with another man. It was not just a small mistake or a moment of confusion, either. They were not just attracted to each other physically. They were sharing very deep feelings and big secrets. It was the kind of close connection that she and I used to have when we were at our best. It was the kind of love I thought still belonged only to us and no one else. For a whole week, I did not say a single word about it. I carried this heavy, painful secret all by myself while I tried to figure out what to do next. Should I tell her what I knew right away and have a big fight? Should I just pack my bags in the middle of the night and walk out the door? Should I beg her to tell me why this was happening to us? In the end, I did none of those things. Instead, I did something I have never done before in my entire life. I sat down at my desk and I made a plan. I worked on it very carefully, thinking about every single step I needed to take. I started my plan by doing some research online. I spent hours looking through different social media pages, and after a while, I found out exactly who Eric was. He was a man she worked with on a regular basis. He was a salesperson for a large company that had worked with her company on a big project earlier in the year. While I was looking, I also found out that he was married, too. I found his wife, a woman named Christine, on a social media website. She was a small woman with dark hair and very kind, gentle eyes. In her photos, she looked so happy. She had 2 little children who were both under 5 years old. My heart felt so incredibly sad for her and those kids, but my sadness did not stop me from finishing my plan. I knew she deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. The plan came together much faster than I thought it would. First, I hired a man named Frank to help me get the facts. Frank was a private investigator, which is a person whose job is to find out the truth and gather evidence. He was a tough-looking guy with a face that reminded me of a bulldog, and he had a very serious way of talking. He did not mess around or waste any time. Frank took many photos that proved every single thing I suspected was true. He had clear pictures of them leaving a hotel together in the middle of the day. In the photos, their arms were touching and they were laughing and looking very happy, as if they didn't have a care in the world. He even got a very clear picture of them kissing in her car in a parking lot. Now I had the proof in my hands. It was real. It was very hard to look at, and I could not ignore it or pretend it wasn't happening anymore. I had to face the facts. Next, I decided to send a message to Christine. I sat at my computer for a long time before I hit send. My message was very simple, honest, and kind. I told her, "Hi, Christine. This is going to be very hard to hear, and I am so sorry. But I believe your husband, Eric, is having a secret relationship with my wife, Laura. I have attached some photos here for you to see, so you know I am telling the truth. I am so very sorry to be the person who has to tell you this terrible news." I felt a lump in my throat as I sent it. She wrote back to me about an hour later, which felt like a lifetime. Her message was very short and direct. It just said, "Thank you for telling me." At that point, things were moving forward very quickly, and I could not stop them even if I wanted to. But I had one last thing I wanted to do before it was all over. I wanted Laura to see exactly what her choices had done to our life. I wanted her to feel the weight and the heaviness of what she had been doing behind my back for all those months. So I asked her to go to lunch with me at our house. I forced a smile on my face and said, "Let's have a special date, just the 2 of us. We haven't done that in a long time, and I miss you." She seemed happy about it, and maybe even a little bit relieved. Maybe she thought that because I was being so nice and extra kind, I didn't suspect a single thing at all. She had no idea that a big, dark storm was coming her way. When the day of our lunch finally arrived, I spent a lot of time making the dining table look perfect. I wanted it to look like the most romantic meal we had ever shared. I put out a clean, crisp white tablecloth, our very best silver forks and knives, and 2 glasses of nice wine. If you just looked at the room, you would think I was trying to be romantic and fix our relationship. But really, the table was like a stage for a play, and the play was about to end. The most important thing on the table was not a vase of pretty flowers or a candle. It was a big, heavy brown envelope. Inside that envelope was every single bit of proof that Frank had found during his investigation. Laura walked into the room with a big, bright smile on her face. Her cheeks were pink from the cool air outside, and she said she had just come from a quick lunch with her friend. But she stopped moving the very moment she saw the table and the way I was sitting there. Her eyes moved quickly from the envelope to my face and back again. She asked me what it was, and I could hear her voice shaking with fear. I did not say a word. I just pointed to the chair for her to sit down across from me. She sat down very slowly, and her smile was completely gone, replaced by a look of worry. I pushed the envelope across the table toward her. I told her to open it. She waited for a second, her hands trembling, but then she did it. Her face got very tight and pale as she looked through all the photos and the printed messages I had collected. She tried to say she could explain everything, but her voice didn't sound like she even believed the words coming out of her own mouth. I sat back in my chair and spoke to her very clearly. My voice was very calm and steady, but my words were sharp and honest. I asked her what she could possibly explain that would change what I saw. I asked if she could explain why she had been lying to me every single day for so many months. I asked why she was sneaking around with a man who had a wife and 2 little kids at home. I told her she was treating our whole 8-year marriage like it was something cheap that she could just throw away in the trash can. Tears started to fill her eyes and run down her face. She whispered in a broken voice that it was not like that. I got a bit louder then, because I wanted her to hear me. I asked her what it was like. Then I told her that from where I was sitting, it looked like she wanted to have everything her way, a home with me and a secret life with him, without caring who she hurt in the process. She started crying very hard, her shoulders shaking, and saying she was sorry over and over again. Those apologies did not mean anything to me anymore. They were just empty words. I just let her sit there and cry in the middle of the mess she had made for herself. When she finally looked up at me, her face was messy from the tears and her makeup was ruined. That is when I told her the next big piece of news. I told her that I had already talked to Christine. Laura's eyes got very wide, like circles, and she looked absolutely terrified. She could not believe that Christine knew everything, too. I told her that she had broken 2 different families, and I said it in a way that showed exactly how angry and hurt I was. Right at that exact moment, there was a loud knock at our front door. Laura looked toward the door with a mix of fear and confusion, her breath catching in her throat. I got up from the table and opened the door. Christine was standing there on the porch. She looked very calm on the outside, but you could see a bright fire of anger in her eyes. And standing right behind her, looking very uncomfortable, was Eric. Laura's face went very pale, like all the color had been drained out of it in an instant. She asked what was happening. I told her that this was the final part of the story. The talk that happened next in our living room was very loud and very sad. Christine told Eric exactly how she felt about what he had done. She told him how angry she was after years of being a good, loyal wife and a mother to his children. Eric just stood there with his head down like a little kid who'd been caught doing something wrong, not knowing what to say to defend himself. Laura tried to say something to help him or make it better, but Christine turned on her very quickly. Christine told her not to try and make it sound like it was okay or a mistake. She called Laura selfish and dishonest. Eric tried to say he did it because he did not feel appreciated at home, which was a very weak excuse. I just laughed a little because it sounded so silly to me. I told him he had 2 great kids and a wife who would do anything for him, and this was how he treated them? By the time they all finally left our house, everyone was completely exhausted. Laura and Eric looked like they were broken into pieces. Christine and I looked at each other one last time. We didn't say anything, but we both knew in that look that we were going to be okay eventually, and that we were much stronger than the people who had hurt us. Everything in my life changed very fast after that big day at the lunch table. Laura packed all of her things into boxes and moved out of our home that same night. The very next day, I went to the court to start the paperwork for the divorce. Christine did the exact same thing with Eric. Eric even lost his job a week later because Christine sent all the proof of what he was doing during work hours to the people he worked for. People in our small town and all of our old friends eventually found out what happened, and Laura's reputation was hurt very badly. They really only had themselves to blame for everything that happened to them. I will be very honest with you. It was not easy for me at first. There were many lonely nights where I cried myself to sleep in our big, empty bed. There were many mornings where I did not even want to get out of bed or get dressed because I felt so sad and heavy. But as time went on, day by day, the big anger started to go away and leave my heart. I decided I wanted to build a whole new life for myself, one that was honest and true. I started talking to a kind counselor to help me understand my feelings. I started running outside every single day to get healthy and clear my mind. I also started hanging out with my old friends again, the ones who really cared about me. Now, a whole year has passed, and I can honestly say I am happier than I have been in a very long time. I have learned that I am a very valuable and good person. I have learned to make sure the people I let into my life are honest and respectful to me. I heard through the grapevine that Laura and Eric did not stay together because they felt too much guilt when they looked at each other. Getting even might not always be the best thing to do, but sometimes it is a spark we need to take back control of our own lives when things go wrong. And that is exactly what I did. I took my life back, and I am finally moving forward into a bright and happy future.